Long before the rising of the sun, when only the two trees of Valinor and stars in the sky bestowed their light upon the world, the elder children of the creator Iluvatar awoke in the lands of Cuiviénen next to the Sea of Helcar in the east of Middle-earth. New to the world, the immortal Quendi, later called Elves, were curious about their surroundings, but also naive to its dangers, and soon fell victim to the Dark Lord Melkor, who held a deep hatred for all of Eru's creations. Ruling from the northern fortress of Autumno, Melkor built an army off the back of his enemies by capturing wayward individuals so he might twist their minds and bodies with dark sorcery to create the violent and savage orc race in mockery of the elves. The primary soldiers of both the first and second Dark Lords, the orcs, were short and sallow-skinned, often weak and craven as individuals, but fearsome and aggressive in a group, eventually bred into warrior orcs, who populated areas like Mordor, the Misty Mountains, and the Grey Mountains. Those great beings, like Melkor, Sauron, the Witch King, and Saruman, who commanded and bred the orcs, also created sub-races like the smaller Snaga, used as laborers, Snufflers, who excelled as trackers, the larger half-orcs and goblin men sent into combat, and the elite Urukai, who were faster, smarter, stronger, and more resilient than all others. Learning of the terrible fate that awaited captured elves, the Valar of Aman, beings of great power who shaped and oversaw the world, traveled to Middle-earth and fought the war for sake of the elves, capturing Melkor and eliminating the immediate threat. The Vala Orome was then sent to contact the elves and offer them a place in Valinor upon the continent of Aman, also known as the Undying Lands, because it was an enchanted realm of splendor and peace for the immortal races of the world. Yet after their experience with Melkor, the elves feared outsiders and would not agree without proof of Orome's claims. Therefore, 3 elven males were chosen to represent the Minyar, Tatyar, and Nelyar clans of Cuiviénen on a great journey west, where they could witness paradise for themselves before returning to report their findings. Using the island Eressëa as a ferry, the elves Ingwe, Finwe, and Elwe followed Orome to complete their mission, and upon their return described all they saw to their people, which convinced many to make the long journey west, while others still believed it was too dangerous, or simply did not want to leave the lands they knew and loved. Thus, the elves of Cuiviénen were sundered into the Eldar, or people of the stars, who journeyed west, and the Avari, or the unwilling, who remained in the east under leaders like Morwe and Nurwe. Departing their homeland, the original 3 elven clans now had new names and rulers, with the Minyar becoming the Vanyar under Ingwe, the Tatyar becoming the Noldor under Finwe, and the Nelyar becoming the Teleri under Elwe. Though they all started with the goal of crossing the continent and sea to Valinor, the long, perilous undertaking made some reconsider and ultimately abandon the journey. Thus, the Eldar were further sundered when the Teleri clan broke apart in the middle of the continent, with some coming to fear the Great Misty Mountains, believing it represented a border they should not cross. As the other elves continued onward, those who remained under their leader Lenwe became known as the Nandor, meaning those who go back, and lived as relatively primitive tribal forest dwellers until re-establishing contact with their kin in later ages. Having already fractured once, the Teleri again faced crisis when their leader Elwe fell into a trance upon his encounter with Melian, a beautiful Maya from Valinor whose magic affected them both. Frozen in place for many years, the Teleri abandoned their westward travels to search for their lost leader, leaving the Vanyar and Noldor to complete the great journey on their own. After years of searching in vain, Orome returned to give the remaining Teleri one last chance to reach the Undying Lands. Thus the Teleri were further sundered, with Elwe's brother Olwe leading the Falmari or Wave Folk to continue traveling westward, while the Sindar, meaning Grey Elves, refused to leave Middle-earth. Some of the Sindar still hoped to find their lost leader, but others simply came to love Beleriand, specifically the coastal areas. With the great journey at last complete, the many elven factions of the Eldar were now divided into 2 broader groups, the Amanyar, those who reached the continent of Aman, and the Umanyar, those who did not. Among the Amanyar, there were the Vanyar, known as the most faithful servants of the Valar, led by King Ingwe in Taniquetil, the Noldor under King Finwë of Tirion, who followed the Vala Aule to learn smithing and craftwork, and the remaining Teleri, called the Falmari, who lived under King Olwe along the coastline in both the city of Alqualonde and the island Eresea, so they could pursue their love of shipbuilding and sea travel. Yet while the Amanyar elves seemed to be living in paradise, an old enemy was soon let loose, and the peace of Valinor was broken. After his defeat in the war for sake of the elves, Melkor was imprisoned in the Undying lands, but after a few thousand years, feigned repentance and was set free. Allying with the Ungoliant, mother to the race of great spiders, Melkor orchestrated an attack against Valinor, first by destroying the two trees of light, and then by charging into Formenos, slaying Finwë, and stealing the precious Silmaril jewels crafted by Feanor, the Noldor king's eldest son and heir. By the time Finwë's children realized what occurred, Melkor fled to Middle-earth, and so Feanor took up the leadership of their people and organized a journey across the sea so they might take vengeance upon the Dark Lord and reclaim the Silmarils. Yet Feanor, his sons, and closest followers grew so radical in their devotion to this mission, they committed the first kinslaying by slaughtering the Falmari elves of the coast when they refused to surrender their ships for the journey. Learning of this terrible crime, the Valamandos spoke a prophecy of doom for all those who continued on to Middle-earth. Thus the Noldor were sundered, when some few, known as the Amanyar Noldor, followed Finwë's youngest son Finarfin back to Valinor, while the elder sons, Feanor and Fingolfin, led the Etian Goldi, or exiled Noldor, to Middle-earth, so they might wage the War of Great Jewels. A special thanks to all those who contribute to Civilization X, like Soul Guide Medical, Sir Jeremiah Ironside of House Cumsia, Sir Dayron of House Ashford, and Christ Walder the Crimson Shadow. If you'd like to help the channel, go to patreon.com/civilizationx, where you can sign up and gain early access to videos, vote on future content, and access the Patreon-only series, Heroes of Lore and Legend.